Hey guys, Jimmy Goode here from Adventure Machine. We are back from Vietnam and we are back in Melbourne. Today we wanted to talk to you about our trip. Now this 15-day journey that we did through northern Vietnam. Today we're going to talk about everything we loved, the things that surprised us, the bikes, the food, the culture. So this trip was a little bit different for us. The last one in India and Rajasthan, I was actually the tour leader. This time we were actually over there shooting with Adventure Machine as a production company. So we were shooting a short documentary on the ride through Vietnam for Nevermind Adventure. This time around, I had Jake shooting the vlog with us. I was there basically as a director slash producer, and we had Benemac with us as well. Now, Benemac is our head of cinematography. He's the guy that creates that beautiful, epic travel porn stuff that you see in our longer documentaries that we shoot for our clients. Vietnam, I have never been there. It was my first trip. We actually organised this trip quite late as well, so we didn't have much time to prepare. I think we had about 2 weeks all up from the day that we got the go-ahead to shoot this content for Nevermind Adventure. I didn't really have any expectations, and because it was a little bit last minute, I hadn't put a huge amount of thought into it. We'd like to do a little bit of research of the places that we're going, just so we sort of understand the sort of stuff that we're going to shoot there. Specifically, when we are shooting content pieces for clients, we like to be a bit more prepared. So all I sort of looked at was the locations that we were going to, where the best places to shoot would be, just to try and find those real like travel porn moments. We left Melbourne, Australia, and we flew into Ho Chi Minh City. We jumped on a connecting flight straight away and went up to Hanoi. Now, Hanoi is the largest city in northern Vietnam. It used to be the capital of communist Vietnam. We got there and it was just cold and wet and misty and just quite miserable the whole time. That was a huge surprise. I wasn't really expecting that, and I probably didn't quite pack well enough for that weather. One of the other things that I didn't realize about Vietnam was they drive on the opposite side of the road to what we do here in Australia. We drive on the left, they drive on the right. So that was a bit of a shock when everyone sort of departed for the first day and we jumped on the opposite side of the road. My brain just didn't quite think about it. So one of the things that I really enjoyed about Vietnam was the food. I actually loved the food over there. 99% of it was fantastic. And the places that we were stopping at were small villages where they were making all the produce themselves. I absolutely scored when it came to the bike. When we got to this little rest stop where all the bikes were waiting for us, it was about an hour's bus ride out of Hanoi. They basically get the bikes up there so we're out of the cities and we've got a really nice place to start riding from without having to experience that chaos of a city. As soon as I got off the bus, it started raining, so everyone kind of like went inside and I could see this like beautiful DRZ 400 amongst CRF 250s and 125s, and this DRZ 400 was just sitting there. I was like, yep, I'm just gonna put my helmet on that one and claim it before anyone else. So I was really lucky to get a 400cc. It's very uncommon to see bikes that big in Vietnam, and especially as a tourist over there, it's really hard to get them. So I kind of just got really lucky. I actually think the DRZ 400 was like an amazing bike for that, particularly because I had Benemac on the back of my bike most of the time. It meant I still could keep up with the rest of the group, no worries, and we tend to like stick back quite a way and then have to play catch up constantly, which is fun because we get to go fast and we don't have to stick with the pack. The DRZ, I've never ridden one before. I've never had much of an interest in that sort of like motard style bike. I've always found them interesting but never really wanted one myself. After riding that bike through Vietnam, I have to have one in my life. Like, bang for your buck, they are such amazing bikes. You can pick them up in Australia for like $2,000 to $3,000. Okay, so Vietnam is an incredible country, and it is an absolutely incredible place to discover on a motorcycle. Some of the highlights for me Ma Pi Ling Pass. Now, that was episode 3, I think, where we actually hit that pass for the first time. It was incredible. It was only like a 20-kilometer stretch, and I think about 10 kilometers of that was the actual amazing visuals, but it's this road that just goes along the side of this mountain, and it's just this huge valley, and it's full of rice fields and little villages on the side of the mountain, and it's just like epic proportions. That was probably one of my biggest highlights, and the roads leading in and out of that, they were just incredible. Like, the quality of the road was amazing, and it was just constant twists and turns the whole way. And I think that was probably the first day that I really got to open up that DRZ 400 and absolutely fang it. And I just had such a good time. I remember I was so far back from the group because we had to stop and get some content, and then I just played catch up, and I was riding this bike literally as fast as I could through these mountain passes. And by the time I met up with the group, I just could not wipe the smile off my face. It was incredible. That day will stick with me for the rest of my life, I think. One of the other highlights on this trip is actually a little bit of a disappointment at the same time. Sapa. Now, Sapa is an amazing city, and everyone was telling me how incredible Sapa was going to be leading up to this trip. Both Benny and Jake have been there before, and they were trying to explain to me how incredible this city was. Now, Sapa it's like a base city for people that want to go trekking and riding, and there's a lot of tourism through there. So there's lots of bars and restaurants and stuff like that. The day that we arrived in Sapa, it was so foggy, we could not even see the tail light of the bike in front of us. There were trucks coming around the corners with no headlights on the wrong side of the road. And it was absolutely terrifying riding into Sapa. And when we got there, the whole city was just covered in this thick smog. Sapa was actually a rest stop for us as well. So we had the opportunity to get out, go to some bars, get on the nangs and have a party. So we really got on the piss. And the next day, everyone was feeling pretty sore and sorry for themselves. Not so much a disappointment, but one thing that I did notice on this trip is we didn't actually get to know our tour leader as much as we did on the trips through India. Now, our trips in India, we hang out with our local guides, we eat with them, we dance with them, we party with them. And one of the things I noticed about the Vietnamese people is they tend to be a little bit more reserved, and I think if I go back, I'm going to make such an effort to try and talk more with the locals and get a bit more of an understanding of how they live and how their culture works, because we kind of missed a little bit of that in Vietnam, I think. My favorite part of this trip would have to be Ha Long Bay. Ha Long Bay was like the reward at the end of the trip. Once we handed back the bikes, we jumped on a bus and we headed straight to Ha Long Bay. It was like the best reward for like 15 days of hard slog on motorcycles. We sat back on a boat and we just cruised around these islands, and it was absolutely beautiful. The boat that we were staying on was incredible. It was a massive surprise. There was like a massive bathtub in the bathrooms. There was big comfy beds. We had our own rooms. Oh man, it was like a luxury. The food on there was great, and we just got to like sit back and relax, you know, and we got to talk about the trip and like share our stories, and I really enjoyed that part of it. The road quality in Vietnam is actually quite incredible. I didn't really expect that. I expected it to be more like India, where there's more potholes than there is actual road. The fact that we weren't doing heaps of off-road stuff didn't really detract from the trip, but I think if I go back, I would really like to try and branch out and get off-road and, you know, get up the side of some of these mountains and things like that. I think that would add sort of next level fun to this trip. The crashes. If you remember back in episode 4, we had a disaster of a day. We had 6 offs in one day, and I was one of those. It was just a weird day. We kind of got up and got going, and they just, you know, like sometimes there's just like a bad vibe, and as the day went on, that vibe got even worse, I guess. So, you know, poor Zane, he went down a couple of times. That was a little bit due to some inexperience and riding road conditions that he hasn't done before. Young guy, new to this sort of riding. He did amazing, you know, and just unfortunately, you know, he went down a few times that day. He's so lucky that he didn't hurt himself. And I think the third crash that he had his GoPro on, and you actually see the bike skidding out in front of him, is exactly the same thing as what Ali did when she broke her leg. That was, it was such a shock, you know, like we've done, what, 6, 7 of these trips now, and we've never had a major injury like that. We've had offs and, you know, other people coming off and, you know, done a rib or something like that at the worst, but like a proper like leg break in 2 places, you don't wish that on anyone. It is just brutal. It was just one of those days. The roads got progressively slipperier, and I noticed it myself as well. Where Zane and Ali had come off, those roads, you could see the speed that the locals were going, and they were going so slow around corners, so they're obviously used to this happening. It must be like a small layer of like the clay that washes over the road after the rains or something like that, because you would just touch your brakes and you would slide. And most of this time we were going downhill as well. So once you get into a slide, it's really hard to get out of it if you don't have that experience. When Ali went around that corner, she just basically slipped, and that bike came down and it just caught her on the wrong angle, I guess. And it's a sort of crash that you could do 1,000 times over and walk away, and just unfortunately this time it got her, and it got her really bad. So after that, you know, the vibe with the whole crew, like everyone was really flat. I think everyone was like, fuck, I got to take it a bit more easy. Like I can't have that happen to me, you know, and myself included. Like I've got Benemac on the back with me. You know, if we went down and, you know, I would feel so guilty if something happened to him. We had one little stack where we came around a hairpin a little bit too fast, my fault. And there was another rider in front of us who had just stopped for whatever reason. I think there was a truck coming and some people on the side of the road. So they were trying to avoid that. And as I came around the corner, I just didn't have enough room to stop, and I basically locked it up. The bike went into a skid, and I thought I'd rather lay it down than sort of wipe her out. And basically I managed to stop just before we hit her, but with the weight of Ben on the back, it kind of threw me off balance, and I dropped the bike, and I pretty much just stepped off of it, and Benny landed on the ground cocooning his camera gear, pretty unscathed, so we're really lucky. But it just shows like this sort of stuff can happen so easily and so quickly and so unexpectedly. Jake came off as well, you know, like just coming around a corner. There was a bus too far over on his side of the road, hit some gravel, done. So we're lucky that that's all the injuries we had, you know, and it was a pretty extreme injury. So be careful out there, guys. Vietnam is a place to have an adventure. Whether you're on a motorcycle or not, I would put it at the top of my list. You have to go visit Vietnam. Get up into the mountains, check out that northern regions, get into Ha Long Bay. It's absolutely incredible. All right, guys, one last thing. Please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, like it, comment below, and share this with your mates. We would love to share our adventures with more and more people and build our little tribe around Adventure Machine. So we will see you in the Himalayas. We know you are going to love it. This next series is going to be incredible, we promise. We'll see you there.